All right, we also have Ronald Contreras. And sir, you're recognized.
Thank you. My name's Reynold Contreras, and I'll start off by a famous speech. They say the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. With that being said, I've spoken to some of the people here. I've spoken to you. My mother found herself in Polk County with the best law firm she can afford, and she was in a mediation, and the man there, the attorney there, pulled out an assault rifle on her and her lawyers. And he was the court-appointed attorney who's also the registered agent for the same professional guardian. Now, we have affidavits that this happened. I mean, it's a complete travesty of justice. In the last 3 years, Florida has seen 3 different secretary for Elders Affairs. 3 different ones in 3 years. I mean, DeSantis' own words were that there's no accountability when it comes to guardianships. At this point in time, this was the famous Rebecca Fierro case, where everyone in Tallahassee resigned. And then that's when Richard Pruden took over, and then we saw nothing from him. And now we have a new person, and her background is PR. And I'm afraid that, like Doug Frank said, that we're not going to see much more change. And what this man has been saying about these investigations, it's a complete joke. I mean, I filed a complaint with my family. Took over a year and a half. They never called us back. They never gave us updates. They haven't even interviewed the witnesses that we have. And these are medical providers. Finally, they reopened the case recently, and they're still doing the same thing. Just so we're on the record, there is a loaded gun in my mother's house that was given to my stepfather in an incapacitated state to hurt my mother. They're refusing to come to the house and collect the gun. I mean, what's happening in these guardianship cases is a complete abuse. It's a complete travesty. The fact that my mother was put in a mediation with a man with a gun, and we have 2 affidavits from her lawyers that went to the Florida bar, and the Florida bar sent me back a letter saying, we're not going to do anything. And just so people know, like, I've been working in the legal field for over 10 years, starting in Miami in the PI business. The very first death case I did was a nursing home abuse case. And I'll never forget the lawyers that walked in that room. They had gold everywhere. They had gold bracelets, watches, chains. They had no sympathy whatsoever for the victims and the families that were there that day because they lost their mother. So this is a complete racket. Those are my stepfather's last words to me was, Ray, find the biggest law firm you can find and stop this racket. And mind you, my stepfather, his name is Pete Beatty. There's a hospital named after him in Plant City with a helicopter because he wanted to help fellow farmers, get out of a situation where they got injured, out on the field. Well, when they finally found my stepfather after these guardianships took over, he had no food, no medicine, a broken hip. There were complaints by DCF, Adult Protective Services. They couldn't find him a nurse. This is a man worth $100 million. And the professional guardian through her company that had a realtor also listed on her LLC, as well as the court-appointed attorney, they just spent all the money and never got him the care that he deserved. They gave him no form of standard of care. So I completely disagree with this bill. I mean, I think this should be similar to what we do with DCF, where if we file a complaint with our kids, we have the right to call in and get an update. We have a right to meet with them again and give them more updates. The fact that there's a gun in my mother's house that was planted there to kill her, and these guys won't even go there and pick it up. I mean, that's how broken this is. And it's a complete shock. I can't believe somebody would even put up a bill like this to say, you know what? With so much abuse is going on in Florida, we're going to keep hiding these records. For what? We're just looking for transparency. We're looking for answers. And we need your support to block this bill. We need a whole lot more transparency, and we need to get this stuff together. We need to start asking questions like, how many is too many wards per professional guardian? Nobody wants to answer that. There could be 500, there could be 1,000. And going back to what a professional guardian is, it's someone who took a 40-hour certificate online. And that's not right. And like I said, we were, I'm a Cuban American. I couldn't see my stepfather for the last 9 months of his life. They took out an injunction on my mother, an ex parte injunction that we never got our day in court. We never saw him again for 9 months. And the group that we're working with, we're talking on behalf of hundreds of families. There's wives losing their husbands. They can't see them again. And this shouldn't be happening. It's unbelievable. And we're just asking for the same honor that we give our children to give to our elders. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody have any questions?
Questions, members? Rep. Cheney, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So do you feel that any of this personal information of the guardian or the ward, if in the wrong hands could cause more harm to a ward?
No, we need all the oversight that we can. We need all the transparency that we can. We need to know what all the, kickbacks that these guardians are getting. We need to know, the fact that this professional guardian had the same court-appointed attorney on her LLC, the fact that she had the realtor on her LLC. Mind you, my stepfather was in a beautiful home, a beautiful nursing assisted facility where we knew a judge had his mom there. They moved them to this house that they bought through that realtor so they can make more money creating little jobs. So we can't trust someone who only has a 40-hour online course. How could we trust them with a $100 million estate? And that's what they did to my family. They fired all of us. They fired all the family members. All the trustees got revoked. All the beneficiaries got overturned. Everything got swapped. And guess who's the new personal representative to the estate? This court-appointed attorney that we've never met, that we've never hired. And millions were spent in legal fees. This should have never happened. We had all our documents in line. We had the healthcare surrogate. We had the guardian. This should have never happened, and we're currently fighting this in appeal. And this was Judge Stargell, for the record. And I'll go on the record that the reason that Judge Stargell got promoted to the appeals court was because I complained to the governor. I told the governor what Judge Stargell did, and now he's in the Second District Appeals Court, and now his wife wants to buy him a new courthouse for $50 million because the one in Pinellas County that was being built isn't acceptable. So, we shouldn't be part of this mafia state, and something needs to happen. And I'm going to keep fighting this every time you guys give me a moment to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Follow-up, Chair?
All right, briefly.
Briefly. So what I appreciate everything you're saying, and that's good information for us. But I've also heard that if the personal information of the ward, like the size of their estate, is out there publicly, that it could actually cause more predatory behavior against the ward.
I agree, but thank you. I agree, but what we're talking about here is the families are going from a 911 call, our loved one's in danger, to we won't hear from you for another 2 years. And that's what we don't want to happen. Of course, I agree that we should protect the financials. We should protect the medical records. But what he's talking about is that any of us call to complain, we'll never hear from his office for another 2 years. And then when we finally get the report, it's like the dumbest report you've ever seen in your life. They couldn't even get anything right. And it was all hearsay. It wasn't based on facts. They haven't interviewed any witnesses. They haven't done anything. In a normal case, you'd have subpoenas. You'd have interrogatories. None of that happened here. It's a complete hearsay asking the guardian, did you do something wrong? No? Okay, thanks. This is a report. It's unbelievable. And Florida statute is very clear that the court-appointed attorney cannot have any relationship with the guardian. So it's a clear violation of the law. And the other fact is that this court-appointed attorney was brought in after the fact. We had a court-appointed attorney for 6 months. And this Judge Stargell decided sua sponte, take him out and bring in his friend that he knew completely was working with that guardian because we found other cases where they worked together. So it's a racket, and it needs to stop.
All right, Rep. Bartleman. Sir, we really appreciate your testimony, but if you could keep it just to the public records exemption that's addressed in the bill and not necessarily, you've had a horrible experience with the process. We're not dealing with that today.
I understand. No,
Rep. Bartleman, you're recognized. Oh, okay. Ranking Member Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. In working with Representative Rizzo and with committee staff to try to narrow this exemption, I want to clarify something with you as someone who has direct experience with this. The existing public record exemption, which continues under this bill, says that what would be exempt from public record is, for example, personal identifying information of a complainant, of course, the person who files the complaint, or the ward. It also goes on to say all photographs and video recordings related to the complaint.
I don't agree with that.
If we narrowed the exemption of the photographs and video recordings to instead be photographs and video recordings of the ward to protect them, but also to give us visibility into what the guardians are doing, and include language that opens up the opportunity for us to get information on the guardian, not the ward. We want to protect the ward, but that we still would be able to obtain information about the guardian. Is that what we should be moving towards as far as how the records exemption should be narrowly tailored.
In your opinion, you're recognized to answer.
Yes, as much information as that we can get from the Guardian as far as, part of their investigation, we need that information as quickly as possible so we can save our loved ones, whether we need to take that information and go straight to the judge and bring it to his attention. But right now what's happening, it's a black hole. From the moment you call them, you'll never hear from them again. And the other thing that's important is that in this same article that came out in 2019, out of the hundreds of complaints that have been filed, not one of them was sanctioned, not one of them was punished. And the group that we're working with in Nevada, they had the April Parks case where they not only locked up the guardian, they locked up the attorney and all her accomplices. So again, this should be just like a child. If we call for help, they need to be available. They need to be talking to us. If we find new information, they should be receptive to that. And that's not what's happening.
All right. Rep. Hinson, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you. So I'm back to my original question. With this bill, if you, being the family member, were allowed to have access to those records, would then this bill be acceptable?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Henson. Yes,
Thank you.
All right. Rep. Joseph, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking the time to be here and share your unfortunate experience. And I know you stand for many more that are not here. My question for you, following up on the ranking member's question about how to tailor this legislation in a way that still provides access to the family members or other heirs that need to have access to this information. I'm not familiar with that area of litigation. I know that was you said the first case that you worked on. Is it useful to also have access not just to your particular family member's information, but to find pattern or practice, facts for discovery purposes? And how does that kind of litigation, or how would that kind of litigation be impacted by this bill as written in its current form?
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Joseph. That's a great question. In my research, I've discovered there's a new elderly fatality team experiment going on in Florida in District 5. And what it is what it sounds like. It's a group of lawyers trying to find out what went wrong in the death of an elder person, whether it was something regarding to the nursing home, the guardian, the hospital. There's so many things that can go wrong. But what's part of that elders fatality team is that, again, they want to seal those records. They want to have these experiments and this research and never let the public know what the shortcomings are. And that's really scary as a society that, we know there's a problem, yet we don't want the problems to be made public. And that's what we need to face. We need to face that as Americans, that we know this is hurting our parents and our grandparents, and we need to work as quickly and as effectively as possible to get that information out to protect them, because we're exposing them to people that really have no experience in caring for the elderly.
Further questions? Sir, we really appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.